Joining us to talk about it from the Dallas-Fort Worth area is commercial real estate expert Cody Payne. And I know your name is spelled P-A-Y-N-E. I'm just hoping for this purpose it's not going to be spelled P-A-I-N.
No P-A-I-N.
Good. You're taking a look here, I'm sure, keeping an eye on what's going on. I don't know how it is in Dallas-Fort Worth, but here in Houston, I mean, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston, and Austin, we all continue to grow by leaps and bounds. I mean, we just keep building, and more people keep moving here, and the strip malls are going up left and right. And even when the economy's humming along, I always take a look at all these storefronts that are going in, and I'm saying, how in the world are they going to fill all of these storefronts? Are you concerned about there being a glut of commercial real estate on the other side of this?
Well, I think there's several factors. And so, obviously, like you're saying, the retailers are getting hit, very hard right now. And, what's funny is, we sell all types of commercial real estate investments, from retail to office to industrial to a little bit of everything. We've got divisions for all. And, the retail and hotel industry are getting hit the hardest right now. And but, retail, I mean, even before the coronavirus was going on, had its several hurdles that it's been overcoming. And, with last year, about 9,300 retailers went out of business, and there was several more even this year going on, and I'm sure the coronavirus is going to affect several of those. But, one thing to keep in mind is, with so many internet companies and internet, sales companies like Amazon and whatnot, I mean, several of these guys have gone to brick and mortar stores, kind of like a Warby Parker, and so that's helped out. But, you're absolutely right. I mean, those sectors are really getting pinned down right now real hard. And what's funny is a lot of investors over time have, as technology has gotten better and as Amazon and all these other internet companies have gotten bigger, they've looked for retail centers that have, service-oriented, like a nail salon, like a dental office, a hair salon, and those are the ones that are shut down right now and are having a lot of the troubles. And so, there's relief that a lot of those guys need to be looking into, but unquestionably.
Yeah, when I look at strip malls right now, and I look at some of the people who are in them, who have been going in them, you see a lot of doctors, dentists, daycare is a big category right now. Trying to think of what else I see fairly often at most of these strip malls that are popping up. They're not the same. It's not just restaurants and your more traditional retailer going into these things. There's a lot more service, as you say, service-oriented businesses that are going in there. I imagine, for some of them, well, first of all, if you're daycare, you have to be a whole lot more than a website, don't you?
Yes, unquestionably. And there's a lot of service companies like a daycare, and, as more and more dental offices and healthcare practices go into retail centers as well. I mean, there's all types that have been really taking over that retail industry as we move forward, and with the changing consumer is, making those changes.
I think, Cody, the thing that we always argue about, after 9/11, we heard about all these habits that had changed as a result of that particular event, and that maybe it had changed things forever. But I think ultimately, it took a little time, but ultimately we kind of went back to a fairly traditional normal. This event doesn't strike me, at least not yet, doesn't strike me as a life-altering event. It just is going to be over too soon to be life-altering.
Well, I think it will affect some areas a little more. Texas is a very good economy, and there's a lot of people that continue to look to invest in Texas. One asset type that needs to be really paid attention to is the office sector. As so many people are being sent to work from home, and larger companies are finding ways to work from home and, utilizing a lot of technology for remote conferencing. The office sector is going to be making, I see, a lot of changes, especially in the flexible workspace industry, which has been booming so much in the Houston and Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Are there particular businesses you see cutting back, Cody, or you think are going to end up having more work-at-home individuals? I guess it depends on how it works out and how productive they are, right?
100%. And I mean, there's a lot of companies that are cutting back. I mean, there's companies all across the board, but there's also companies that are doing very, very well. My father's in the logistics industry, and so they, ship freight all across the U.S. And he's more busier now than he's ever been. But that's just that one particular industry. But a lot of companies, larger companies, tech centers, people that are in the call center industry, they're finding ways to work. And the technology out there has transformed the office space over the past 10 years drastically as it is. And so they're finding more and more ways to work, and retailers are also utilizing all those avenues as well that are making, the retail industry change with the, millennials and consumers out there. So it's going to affect the office and the retail industry, I believe, the most, because it's making those companies find new ways to work.
All right, let's before we turn away from commercial real estate for a moment here, what do you think this does? For people who are, let's talk about the tenant versus the owner relationship here. How do you think this is going to change as a result? Is this going to drive down the price of office space in Houston? Do you think?
Well, I think that it's going to mainly depend on what our governor says. I know he's talking about looking at reopening as soon as possible, and that's really going to be the biggest driver there is when they're able to reopen Texas or a majority of Texas. I know the main key areas are, Austin, San Antonio, DFW, and Houston. Those are going to be the most contributing factors. And so I know that they're looking to announce that here pretty soon, and I think that's what's going to be the biggest key. Okay.
And if you were a betting man at this point, what do you think the governor's going to do? How soon do you see him potentially reopening things?
Well, I think that they're looking at doing something before the end of April. Whether they're able to and whether the government steps in is going to be kind of a wait and see. But I know the governor wants to get it done ASAP.
I would think the president would support him in that, although it was interesting today that the president sort of tweeted out that, yes, he's talking to the governors. His administration is working with them, but it's his decision as to when we reopen the country. And that struck me as kind of interesting, considering the fact that he pretty much left it up to the states to decide when they were going to shut it down and how they saw the shutdown happening in their particular state.
Yes, and so, I know that they're trying to figure that out. I know San Antonio and Austin, I know really DFW and Houston are the main key players, and they're monitoring those cases as they keep coming in. And so, but one thing I would say to people that have businesses and that are tenants in, whether they're in an industrial building or an office building or retail center, if they're having issues, if they haven't looked into that SBA loan program that the government has approved, that's one very, very key factor that those tenants need to look into, because they're expediting those loans. And instead of just asking the landlord for rent relief, those things can actually help these guys, especially with their employees' pay.
I think a lot of people were, at least a few of the business people I talked to, were a little disappointed. They had applied for the loans. They hadn't seen anything yet. But I think, when you take a look at overall how quickly this program is rolling out compared to the way the federal bureaucracy works most of the time, it's moving pretty fast, because I know money is getting delivered to these banks who it's up to them to facilitate these loans to begin with. That money gets delivered this week, so I think some of those loans are going to go through the final processing this week, and these businesses will have money in hand fairly shortly.
Well, yes, and those landlords need to be encouraging those tenants that are looking for rent relief or rent concession to do that, because, there is relief out there for tenants and businesses that are, occupying space, but there's really not a lot of relief for the landlord right now. And so they need to be pushing those tenants to pursue that SBA loan program.
Okay. So at the other side of this, do you think we end up with more, less, or the same amount of commercial real estate available?
Well, I think it's going to be a slow, gradual increase back into the marketplace, and I think that certain sectors, like we were talking about, the retail and the hotels, they're going to be a little slower to get back into the game. But, as far as the office, the industrial, the self-storage, those guys really haven't been hit as hard right now. But that's not to say if it continues, they won't see it. I know one of the last projects that we worked on, actually several of them, in the office industrial world, they were still at 90-95% rent collection, and I know our retailers were nowhere near that number.
Yeah. Okay. Cody, appreciate the update. Thank you, sir. Take care and
Thank
be
you,
well,
guys.
okay? Yep.
You too, sir.
Cody Payne. Yep. From Dallas-Fort Worth, commercial real estate expert Cody Payne joining us here on News Radio 740 KT.